Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 88 of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. Well, in episode number 87, we started off this Desert Island Photographs series, a couple of podcasts that detail the Desert Island photograph selections of a number of Camera Position listeners. As you may recall, in a long ago episode, I asked Camera Position listeners to send me their desert island pictures that would sustain them should they be trapped on a desert island. And so we'll finish up with those today. And again, I found these to be really interesting for a bunch of different reasons, not the least of which was a number of pictures I would not have expected, and the reasons that people chose them, also very interesting as well. So let's jump right in with Matthias Daum. Matthias sent me this. The image I have included below is called Sandstorm Day by Don Hong-Oai. I remember reacting to this image when I first saw it, and this reaction is what made me pick it. The photograph made me lean into the computer screen, lean back out, and realize that my stomach felt tight, and my feet were tingling with a barely suppressed urge to get up, grab my camera, and try to capture something even vaguely akin to this scene. I saw a woman with a conical hat carrying pails of water through a sandstorm, but a sandstorm so exquisitely defined, its movement so clearly obvious, and its force alluded to by the angle the pails are hanging at, and by the way she holds on to her hat, that it seemed to jump out at me. The sand and its marking with the footsteps leading up to the woman, contrasting with those ethereal wisps of sand and air, she heading into the light and the center of movement, all that did it and still does it for me. It makes me want to move and create, and those are precious impulses to me. Well, that's really a wonderfully written piece and really accompanying a beautiful photograph. And I love the idea that here is a picture that makes a photographer want to go photograph, not just to look at the picture and admire it and deconstruct it, as Matthias has done so ably, but also to really want to go and do the act of photography and try and capture something that has that same sort of emotional tug that Matthias found with that photograph. So a great response to that particular image. Another submission came from Sammy Altokais. I hope I get that fairly close to being correct, Sammy. He says, "Hey Jeff, great podcast and very informative history of photography class. Thanks." Well, thank you for listening, Sammy. Here's my desert island photograph. I took this in Yalova, Turkey in August of 2009. I like to call it Happy People. It makes me smile every time I look at it. It was shot on film with Ilford HP5+. And Sammy signs, regards, Sammy. So I like this idea too. I like the idea that there are photographs that we create that somehow give us the sort of desire to go on. So here is a photograph that Sammy made himself that gives him a pleasurable feeling when he looks at it, probably reconnects him with the moment of the making of that photograph, and acts as a memory device. But more importantly, a photograph of these wonderfully laughing people makes him laugh, makes him smile. So a terrific response to this desert island query. The next desert island submission I got was from Ian Livesey from England, and Ian says, "Hi Jeff, this image immediately jumped to mind, but it was a real labor to find online. I presumed wrongly that it was one of Henri Cartier-Bresson's most famous images, but I guess that, given that I had to go direct to Magnum to find that I'm wrong, serves me right for studying the old masters on my own. I am not picking out the classics. I loved this image since I'd first seen it in Henri Cartier-Bresson's Europeans book. The two different modes of transportation going in opposite direction, the technical difficulty of shooting from a boat, and of course just the sheer brilliance of recognizing that there's a moment there worth capturing at all, mean that I can look at this shot over and over again. I was going to send you an image of a cake and say that this was my favorite desert island image. He's spelled dessert correctly as opposed to desert, but I thought it was a little too predictable even for my sledgehammer humor. Keep up the great podcasts. I know a cliche, but no less a heartfelt plea. So thank you, Ian. Yeah, I didn't get any desert island pictures, although yum, let's go right ahead and eat dessert first. But a wonderful and really kind of an obscure Henri Cartier-Bresson photograph. Just a terrific picture, though, and Ian nails it. It's not just the sort of symbolic idea of these two different modes of transportation, but recognizing that there's going to be a picture in this sort of odd conglomeration of things that does, in fact, make you look twice at the composition. It makes you look twice at what it is that we're looking at. Just a really terrific image. And I'll include all of these images on the cameraposition.com blog page as well, so you can take a look at them if you're not looking at the enhanced podcast version of Camera Position. Next up was Lewis Dunn, and Lewis says, great idea, Jeff. Here's one answer and one photo. A desert island photograph engages you in an ongoing conversation. That conversation partly involves in differing interpretations or meanings of what the overall photograph depicts. A conversation also takes place between you and the subject or subjects in the photograph, whether people, other living things, or inanimate objects, with questions asked and answers guessed. Still another conversation occurs with the photographer, reflecting his or her choices made. A final conversation takes place with yourself regarding what a photograph suggests about the great questions of human life across countries, cultures, and historical epochs. With all of these continuing conversations, there should be little boredom under that proverbial desert island palm tree. You know, I love my listeners. Thank you, Lewis, for that. You know, here's Lewis saying that really the impulse for photographing is asking questions, providing some answers, providing some ways to guess at potential answers, and ways that we use photography to learn about the world around us and to ask those questions about the world around us. And while Lewis doesn't claim it himself, I'm assuming that this is a photograph that he made himself, and therefore is one for him that asks and answers and guesses at those questions about human existence and what we value and how we value it. And lastly, former student of mine from College of DuPage, S. Scott Simmons, and Scott says, my choice for the desert island photograph would have to be Edward Weston's Cabbage Leaf, made in 1931. Every time I look at that photograph, I'm reminded of a statement that I read of Weston's good photographic composition is merely the strongest way of seeing. For him, to be able to see one strong composition in something as basic as a cabbage leaf is amazing. It inspires me to take a closer look at my surroundings and to teach myself to look at everyday things in a new way, through the eyes of a photographer. It also lets me know that I don't have to go grand to make a great photograph. Thanks, and keep up the podcasting. So thanks, Scott. And I think that's right. You know, we tend to think that our mission is to find the most amazing photographic thing in the world and make a picture of it. And yet here's Weston making this truly amazing photograph out of something as lowly as a cabbage leaf. And I've always admired the way this composition sends the viewer's eye up and over through the image, the way the edges of the frame very adequately and completely define the space that we're going to look at. Really a terrific image. Well, I really appreciate those of you who have sent desert island images in. This was a fun exercise suggested some time ago by one of my listeners. So I really love the idea of kind of a collaborative podcast venture in these last couple of podcasts. So I appreciate everybody sending images, and I appreciate you listening to Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. Camera Position is a proud member of the Photocast Network, your photo resource in the potosphere. photocastnetwork.com